Okay, first of all, thank you for the invitation. We are waiting for my presentation, but a short introduction, because that presentation will be more on climate change than populism. But of course, I find some linkages between these two subjects. I'm planning to discuss with you that wisdom has to compete today with stupidity, and unfortunately, stupidity is winning. And we simply have to do something concretely to avoid us from long list of risks, which I'm planning to present, spending my professional life with UN. I started, by the way, 20 plus years ago as a Warsaw University student. So as a student, I started with United Nations, first with United Nations Development Program, with Global Environment Fund, and I'm still there. So simply you are seeing someone who is with UN, very directly linked, and that's my also place of interest, also how to improve the quality of UN policies, especially climate change as a global policy. You don't have. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, super. So let's start from the famous picture from NASA Earth Observatory Program. That one is well known, but the second one is much more interesting. So the next slide, please, because here you have you have us, simply where we are, we as a human beings. So city as a network, as a network of megalopolis, small cities, much bigger, and simply where we locate ourselves on the globe. And the next slide is even more attractive, because as we know, we are trying as UN to protect ourselves from various threats, especially wars. That's why UN Charter is here, the moment of signing. And the next slide, Eleanor Roosevelt and her unbelievable work to agree Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And it's really good to start from that element, especially to start from article number 1 of the document. Let me read it loudly, with strong recommendation to read that document once again, to refresh how wonderful that piece of knowledge is. So article number 1, of course we have much more, but that one is, from my perspective, brilliant. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience, and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. And that's a challenge. And of course, when we remind ourselves for what UN system was established, to protect ourselves as human beings, as Homo sapiens, from our aggression to ourselves, from hate, from wars, from all the risks which simply we are in which we are very good. We are very professional with killing ourselves. Yeah, we have a long list of weapons, missiles, and also we are able to calculate how much we are even spent for so-called global defense expenditures. It's good to know that if we will reduce global defense budget by 9%, we will have enough funding to deal with climate change as a global threat, as a global problem. Next slide is wonderfully showing from where we are starting. We are starting from the World War II casualties and that huge trauma which we still have not only in Europe but also in other places. Holocaust is part of that discussion. And of course, the next slide is showing that war is still with us. So we have a long list of wars which are still, especially in the Africa continent. In Europe, we are concentrating on war in Ukraine and Russia. But in Africa, it's good to know that we have 25 wars just right now, so-called forgotten conflicts. And of course, as a consequence of these conflicts, we have violations on human rights. Next slide, and here, moment for reflection, how to deal with that. How to deal with stupidity. How to implement wisdom effectively. That's also what we are trying to do within UN system, to somehow promote knowledge, especially promote all the tools and all the recommendations which could avoid us from potential future problems, like climate migrations, global hunger, water crisis, etc. Here you have perfect picture on global inequalities. Why that graph is so attractive? Because we have a difference between so-called global north, which simply was smart enough to concentrate goods and power in their hands, and the global south, which is much, much more purer. The next slide is showing it in a funny, the next slide, please, in a funny graph. Next one. Yeah, next one, please. Oh, that one, because I have only 30 minutes, so I have to speed up a bit. Because the consequences of these inequalities is precisely like this, as presented here. We have a global north countries which are rich enough to consume a lot of fuels, especially gas, coal, and oil. It's good to know that global north is consuming most of them, and of course we are emitting a lot. We are emitting 86% of global emissions of CO2. Just 13% are with global south. When on the global south, which is representing this 14% of emissions, we have 50% of populations, precisely 49%. So simply 51% of populations is emitting 86% of CO2 emissions plus emissions of methane and other greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, these inequalities, that's a global challenge we have to face, and we have to deal somehow with them. Consequences. Global overheating. And my recommendation to you, please stop saying global warming, because warming is something nice. Global overheating, planetary global overheating, that's a precise and good scientific word for the phenomena you are just observing. Global overheating. What is also good to know that since Paris Agreement, we are entitled as UN staff to use climate crisis for this type of dialogue as I have with you. Why? Because at the global level and at the local level, we are everywhere seeing the same phenomena. Temperatures are rising. Also here in Poland, I don't know how many are from here, how many from participants are from Poland. Please raise your hands to better understand who is from Poland. 2, 3 people, okay? So others are not from here, okay? But in Poland, we're also facing such a tremendous problems with growing of temperatures. The other global program, global sea level change. Please press once more. Okay, yeah, please keep it. The data are from NASA, and they are simply perfectly showing that we should be worried. Why? Because when we will come back to the network of cities, 30% of them are located close to sea or oceans. So most of them have to relocate themselves. What that mean? That means global climate migrations. If we calculate that, of course, yes. We know precisely how many people have to move from the place where they are just right now living to the other in 30, 40 years. Jakarta is the best example, the harbor in Indonesia, 14 million people, and they have to relocate themselves from the present position to North Island, Borneo. The decision were made 3 years ago. And we have, of course, much more this type of examples, and that's a challenge. Here you see the consequence of the global sea level rise. All these areas in red will disappear. Please take a look on Florida and my famous example, Donald Trump favorite place to play golf, yeah? Disappear for sure. The problem of Holland, the same. The problem of main part of Southeast Great Britain, the same. Indonesia, a huge problem. We have a list of countries which will disappear completely, like 16 island states with Kiribati on the top. I will come back to the Kiribati as an example. Poland, again, local example, we have the same challenges. And again, network of cities, because here we are simply losing something which was very stable. Now that stable network of cities have to move because of climate change. Next slide, please. Here you have a Kiribati example. Just to remind you where Kiribati is located, Central Pacific, 27 islands, 23 with people, total population 120,000 people. So it's not a huge nation. They are very flat, and they have to relocate themselves in 30, 40 years, not because they will be covered by a huge tsunami, but because of water crisis. They will simply lose source of safe drinking water. And of course, because this population is really poor, they are number 164 on Human Development Index list. They have to produce food for themselves locally. They don't have, Walmart or Polish Biedronka or similar, shops where you can buy avocado, bananas, or piece of bread. They have to produce all these things locally, or catch a fish locally to survive. This type of countries we have at least 16, like Marshall Islands, like Kiribati, as I mentioned, plus much more others. 6 great species extinction is underway. That's the other threat. Please, next slide. Biodiversity collapse, which is much less recognized than climate change, because climate change is a bit popular as a topic, but biodiversity loss, not at all. Some people, especially scientists, knows IPCC report, but who knows IPBS, the report which is precisely defining which species will extinct in 10, 5, 15 years? Especially we don't know about extinction of species which are fundamental for our existence, like coral reefs. We are dependent on proteins from fish. If we will lose rough coral reefs, we will lose 25% of oceanic ecosystem. As a consequence, we will have global food crisis. How fast? In 30, 40 years. Next slide, please. So more or less, we have scientific consensus about that topic since at least 1 decade. The consensus project estimated at that time, 1 decade ago, that 97% of scientists who are dealing professionally with climate change agreed that we are responsible as human beings for that threat, from that problem. But the perspective of public opinion is slightly different. So 55% at that time thinks that the climate scientists agree on global compact, on global warming. The rest are simply the rest simply don't know. Why? Because they don't care. They don't care because they prefer to to live in a comfort of not knowing. That's very attractive element of stupidity. Please take a look on that. It's much easier to live without all these facts, all these potential consequences which will happen. The next slide, please. Huge success, Paris Agreement. So we agreed internationally, concrete agreement which will at least trying to avoid us from the crisis which will coming. But next slide, please. And we had supporters like Barack Obama, Joe Biden. Simply they listen carefully what their scientists are saying, and that's interesting because we are now moving slowly to the populism as a subject for our today's discussion. We have political leaders who are responsible for the country, and their society is paying taxes to have institutions like governmental agencies which are producing reports without showing concrete data, concrete analytical analysis, like NASA, like NOAA, like other United States governmental agencies. And fortunately, these two guys, Obama and Biden, don't ignore that. But as we know, President Trump is ignoring it. Next slide, please. And here we have the, long list of his quotes. My favorite is, I'm not a big believer in global warming. Believer, important word. I prefer that a leader of the nation is using, I know, or I don't know, but I'm ready to check. With whom? With scientists, because I believe in science. He preferred to believe in something which is a myth, that global warming is not exist at all. And here you have a long list of similar of his quotes from the past and from now. Next slide, please. We have examples of US agencies like NASA, and my colleague Catherine Calvin, she was nominated by Biden to be a part of IPCC commission to help to build a linkage between all the science which we get from scientific institutions like European Space Agency, NASA, or Japanese Space Agency, or similar. And next slide is showing how huge portion of knowledge is offering NASA Earth Observatory as a scientific program. We have similar in Europe, Copernicus, managed by European Space Agency. But all the things they are doing are amazing. So they are simply really, really good with observing from the orbit what is happening around us, and to provide very concrete recommendations for political leaders how to manage the global population to avoid future problems. Next slide, please. Here you have NOAA and Climate Program Office in NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency, and CIA Center on Climate Change and National Security. So two other examples of state institutions, serious ones, who are delivering reports to the owner of the White House. For us, just as an interesting fact, every year CIA is providing a document which is called Global Risks for United States. As a point number one, in every single report since at least 2 decades, climate change is on position number one. Important fact. CIA is producing the document, and that document has a source center on climate change and national security. Next slide, please. Now, Donald Trump administration is starting to fire people which are providing all this knowledge. Again, interesting fact in the context of populism. Huh? Populists don't like science, and they have how to deal with scientists. So NASA fires Catherine Calvin, NOAA employees are fired because of federal cuts and reduction of employers. And the next slide, please. The same is happening with environmental agency within UN. Here you have the slide from the Biden times, and the next slide is showing where we are now. The next slide, please. Powering the Great American Comeback. Funny, huh? As a main page for environmental protection agency, that's a bit scary. And of course, we have a Polish context. Here we have Polish politicians who are with climate denialists movement. They are very popular in Poland, unfortunately. On the right side, you have Grzegorz Braun. In the center, Janusz Kowalski. On the left side, Karol Nawrocki. Two from these three are they was planning to be a Polish president. Still with the race is Karol Nawrocki with slightly big chance to win it. These three guys together, they have more than 40% of 45%, maybe more or less of polls supporting them, and that's scary because they are against science. Next slide, please. My favorite guy, Janusz Korwin-Mikke, who is a climate denialist since 3 decades. And he's still with that trend. Very popular guy in Poland. Similar problems we have in other countries, of course. Next slide, please. To deal with that, we have scientists like you. And we have united in science as a concept to fight with this stupidity and to find some, concrete tools to deal with that problem that political leaders are not listening anymore, scientists, even national agencies. They prefer to promote stupidity because it's popular. It's good for their population rates. Next slide, please, is showing so-called SDG coordination mechanism, how we are trying to navigate the world as UN system. We are trying to do that in 5 horizontal corridors: for people, for planet, for prosperity, for peace, and for partnership. And next slide is showing the place where we are trying to achieve that. UN General Assembly Hall. Every single country we have within General Assembly Hall, 193 countries. Every single country has the same right to speak because we are equal, has the same portion of time during General Assembly to present what kind of problems they have, what they are planning to deal with their present long, short, or mid-term policies. And during that hall, we also have a chance to present, next slide, please, so important reports like that one. IPCC report, synthesis report from the last one, which is showing, next slide, scenarios. Scenarios for the planet, scenarios for humanity, scenarios for other species. Next slide, please. And of course, also, we are showing which scientific institutions are supporting that consensus around climate change globally. What is interesting, on the position on the right side, we are not supporting that global consensus. We have 0 scientific institutions, 0. On the left side, all the others. So the best idea is to check every single politician who is saying that global climate change phenomena don't exist or we are not responsible for that. Please provide me the source, Mr. And here you have your politicians from your respective country or Donald Trump or similar. It's impossible to provide a source. And that's our weapon. And that's the biggest victory with that unequal fight. Because we have, we have limited tools to deal with Donald Trump as UN. But our only and main weapon, if I may use that word, is science and scientists. And that's an example of small victory. Next slide, please. Of course, the journey which bring us to the point that we have a global consensus has a history. So we started with 1949, first UN Scientific Conference on Natural Resources. Climate policy was born that year. Next slide is showing famous Stockholm Conference in 1972. UNEP was born during that conference, United Nations Environment Program. Next slide, please. 3, the most important reports, let's say pillars for climate change. Rome Club, first UNEP report, first IPCC report. Next slide. UN climate change process started 1992 with Kyoto Protocol, Cancun. Next slide, please. Paris Agreement, of course, first national determined contribution 2020, and of course we are waiting for results from Belém in Brazil. Very important climate summit, which is coming and which will summing up all the efforts from this 3, from the COP28, 29, and of course from Belém. And on the next slide, especially for all the people who are criticizing climate summits, it's a funny fact, but we are always calculating how much CO2 emissions we generate to organize such a summit. The last one generate CO2 emissions equal to 3 concerts of Taylor Swift. That's it. I like Taylor Swift. Maybe you also like Taylor Swift, but it's good to, precisely calculate and later discuss what is more important to meet all the leaders in one place to deal with science, because that's again our huge chance that we are in a position to present to 193 leaders of all the states which are within UN General Assembly what science is planning to say. And sometimes we have some small successes again, that country by country, we are a bit closer to find a global consensus around global CO2 and global methane reduction, emissions reduction. Next slide, please. Of course, we have other reports like Human Development Report, my favorite one, because I started with that one as a UNDP staff. In 2006, we, for instance, presented how huge problem is water crisis and how quickly we will lose water in long list of countries. Next report, climate crisis in Africa, and of course, as a consequence, climate migrations from that continent. Next is precisely showing that. After that, as you remember, we have 2011, the huge problems on North Africa and Middle East. ISIS was born and all the other crises like migration crisis in Europe. Next slide, please. Philip Ashton, special report on extreme poverty and human rights, and his report, very depressing, is showing that if we will not if we will lose that fight with climate change, most probably we will also lose humanity and we will lose human rights as we know it. Because what he is writing on that report, and that report was presented to Secretary General and later to whole General Assembly, that UN is predicting that 2 billion of people have to move from place A to place B to escape from lack of water, lack of food, and high temperatures in future years. And the philosophical question, what we will do with all these refugees? If we will welcome them friendly, or maybe not. If we will accept their existence together with us in wonderful, rich Europe, or maybe we will decide to shoot on them. Professor Ashton is saying that most probably we'll choose the second option. We will shoot on them. That's why our today's topic, populism, climate change, and future human rights crisis is so directly linked. And it's good to have all these links in one holistic map. Because unfortunately, we are losing that battle. First on stupidity and wisdom level, later on democracy and autocracy level. I will also show you that the slide on that. But first, we are losing migration policies because they are in huge crisis. So we are not able to agree solidarity around that, a global empathy for all these people who are escaping from countries you are observing from the global south to the global north to escape from, you know, from hunger and lack of water. And UN population trends, and here you have this dilemma on the left side. If we will have in 70 years from now 12 billion of people, or maybe 9. This gap, most probably we could lose 3 billion. But how? They will die. The question is, who will kill them? We? Most probably yes. That's why it's good to read Philip Ashton report. Because he precisely write that down. Next slide, please. Davos, World Economic Forum. Please take a look on the right side. 4 the most important risks. All of them on green, linked with environment, climate, biodiversity. Even business is seeing that. Next slide, please. Why? Because business is observing global trends. Here you have consequences of climate change, so growing global demand for cooling. So simply, how many people are rich enough to buy very well functioning air conditioners? Fortunately, number of rich people is growing because that's a global, development. But as a consequence, we need more energy. From what? from the cheapest source. What is the cheapest source? Coal. And as a consequence, we have what you can see, the growing emissions. Next slide, please. Food. One of the most important threats. If we will lose area where we can produce green things to eat or meat for our consumption, we will be in the huge trouble. FAO, World Food Organization, is precisely showing how fast we are losing areas where we can produce food. We will lose food stability for growing population 2000. Very quick. Next slide, please. Philosophic dilemma. How to manage that problem? Especially that China knows that they are not able to produce food for their own population. India the same. So they have to buy somewhere or invade country which simply has enough land to protect these two countries from food crisis risks, which is simply growing. What that mean? Of course, future wars. And that's why we as UN are concerned, because we are precisely for that reason to avoid world from wars. Yeah? Again, Charter of the United Nations. Poland, the same. We are losing places where we can produce food for our Polish also population, and we are in Poland facing huge water crisis, of course, together with other consequences for trees, for field, and for cities. Infrastructure, insurance sector, very important. 7 years ago, Secretary General Guterres invited to New York to Climate Action Summit as a part of General Assembly, private sector. As you know, UN Global Compact, the place where I'm working, is responsible for cooperation between private sector and United Nations. And the global insurance sector were asked by Secretary General if you are ready to cover all the risks which are linked with climate change. The answer was no. If we will do that, we will globally collapse. The other perspective. Next slide, please. Tourism, the same story. This sector is in crisis because of climate change. Next slide, please. But because we are smart enough as a species to develop ourselves, we are of course still planning to use the phenomena of the global market, of the global consumption, because it's fine, it's super, yeah? It's super for us. Consequences are here, so we know precisely where we are with which sectors we have emissions. On next slide, you have calculation. Oh, here, thank you. Who is responsible for the most CO2 emissions? And that slide is really important because for the global south, that slide is unacceptable. Why? Global south is preferring the next slide. Please, next slide. That one. Because that one is showing cumulative emissions. So how much we as global north emit since industrial revolution. Because precisely because of industrial revolution, we are so rich as Great Britain, even Poland, Sweden, United States, and long list of other countries which are simply lucky enough to be present and to benefit from industrial revolutions 2.5 centuries ago. And here you have the other graph which is showing these inequalities. So we have 4 categories of countries. In blue, highly developed. In red, upper middle income. On gray, lower middle income. And green, low income. On top, you have number of percentage of population, and you have a percentage of global CO2 emissions. And please take a look how huge emissions we have from color, from blue and red color. 86%, as I mentioned. That's the global north. All these countries are rich enough to cover all the costs related with energy transformation. We in Poland were rich enough to deal with our coal for sure. We don't want, because we prefer to spend for other needs, for other purposes. Countries, please stay here. Lower middle income and low income, they are poor enough. They are not able to cover their reforms on energy sector. They need our help, and we have a mechanism to help them. ODA, Official Development Assistance. So rich country is providing funding to the much poorer to help that country with important reform, especially when these reforms are crucial for global surviving of Homo sapiens. Yeah, that's a climate policy. And here we have who emits the most per person. And next slide, our progress report on energy, SDG 7. Just to remind you, SDG 7, Sustainable Development Goal, clean and energy for all. That's a title for that goal. And on the right side, you have some data. First bar, very important, we have huge progress with electricity, with access to electricity. Please take a look. From 1 billion drops to 685 million. Huge progress. But the question is, from what sources we get that electricity? We of course know that. Global energy sector is consuming, to produce energy for global population, to produce electricity, 82% is from coal, oil and gas, 82%, 7% from nuclear energy, and 12% from green sources. What that mean? That we are addicted as the populations on coal, oil, and gas. 82% is a lot. How to change that? Well, of course, we have to change the model. Please, next slide. And escape from this very productive, very effective model of producing energy from coal. It's the cheapest way, yeah? To more significant, to more, unfortunately, still more expensive sources of production energies from especially green sources and nuclear energy. Nuclear energy, for my information, is from UN perspective supported by us, and we are defining nuclear energy as a potential solution. We have even a policy, nuclear for climate, yeah, as an official UN policy on that area, on that source. Two scenarios. Left one, which is showing that nuclear is winning, color yellow color, and on the right side you have orange color where solar is winning. But in both scenarios, please take a look on the base. The base is still the same, color red, green, and black. Three main sources for production of energy. So it's we are still in a trap. Yeah. Why the energy consumption is growing? Because population is growing. That's why we have this. That's why it simply looks like that. Even if this on the top, this part with green sources is also growing, we are still in an energy trap because population is in a huge simply is growing so fast. 12, maybe 13 billion in the next 4 or 5 decades. We still have oil, a lot. Only remaining or proven reserves. Of course, we have much more under Antarctic Ocean, close or around Greenland. We don't. Frankly, we don't know how huge resources we still have from oil reserves, because we know only 18% of surface under the ocean. Only 18% is somehow checked by scientists. The rest is terra incognita. Next slide is even more attractive, because please take a look and find democracies here. Countries which are sitting on oil. That slide is very important because we also know for what are spent petrodollars, sometimes for tanks and missiles, simply to have wars, yeah? So the best corridor to escape for future wars is to support climate policy, because we are changing the logic behind energy production. We're escaping from this picture to the picture which is much more safe for future generations. Simply, we could have, if we will win with climate policy, countries which will produce energy based on green sources which are produced locally. So simply, and simply they are much more safer also from the geopolitical perspective. Next slide is precisely showing the linkages between countries which are sitting on oil and this distinction between democracies and autocracies. The link is more than visible. Where we have authoritarian regimes and where we have democracies. Next slide, please. Here you have the other report, which is showing Freedom, famous Freedom House analysis, the same history. And next slide. The other challenge, global transport sector, which is based on oil. Yeah, so it's very difficult to escape from that picture, because that picture, this is our comfort of living. We are expecting to still have avocado in the shop. Yeah. So if that's our expectations and global economy works like this, we have a global transportation system very well funded, by us, by consumers. And unfortunately, that global transportation system is based on oil. Please click twice. Here we have air traffic and sea traffic. Next slide, please. I'm finishing. So the only solution is to deal somehow diplomatically on that. Yeah, so on the left side, we have wisdom and scientists and reports like IPBES, IPCC, scientific institutions, long list I presented before. On the right side, we have populism. And we have this human inaction. The huge portion of society which is simply saying nothing. I don't care. And here it's a place for us to do something as scientists, as international organizations, local NGOs, activists, to also properly use social media and other channels to promote knowledge, to promote wisdom. And next slide, please. To escape from that, from climate scenarios. Next slide, please. From climate generations, which will be in a trouble. Next slide. And from so-called heating scenario prepared by NASA, which is catastrophic. All the areas above 35 degrees are simply it's not for for mammals and for other for most of species. For us, for sure. So we have to escape from these areas. The question is where. Of course, we still have some places relatively safe, like North Canada, New Zealand, or huge part of Russia. But this discussion on relocation is very needed, because most probably we will have to deal with that problem in 20, 30 years. We are even now have it. I presented to you an example of Kiribati or Jakarta. Next slide. Dreamers. We have also dreamers, like, and that's my 5 last slides. I'm escaping from all the things which is Elon Musk saying, and I'm focusing your attention on SpaceX and all the things he has done to sell to you dream, let's colonize Mars. Wonderful dream. Next slide is showing it that we have a ability to use very sophisticated rockets, Falcon 9, Falcon 9. Next slide, please. We have SpaceX. Next slide. We have, the huge potential here. Next slide. We have even a precise plan how to achieve Mars. It takes us 11 months. Next slide. We have a well-designed Mars solar bases. Next slide. We know what we will eat there. Next slide. We will have a romantic, walk tours. But next slide, we even know how the Earth will look like from Mars. Earth is there, yeah, the small, tiny light point. But we also know from NASA, from European Space Agency, and from Calvin, which, as I mentioned, she was fired a couple of days ago by Donald Trump administration, that planet Mars is able to kill us in a very sophisticated ways. They have an ability to kill us 1,028 times as a human species if we will land there. So the percentage of successful future NASA or ESA or someone mission to Mars is like 0.0003% of surviving of future astronauts. That's why this dream is only a dream. But we have a planet which is not planning to kill us at all. That planet is Earth. And the crazy situation we are facing, that we are planning to, send us to Mars, and terraform the whole planet. But we should do something totally opposite to take care on the planet Earth. And I'm finished. And now, if you allow me, I will ask you for 2-3 more minutes attention to listen to someone much more important and smarter than me, Mr. David Attenborough. His speech on the beginning of Climate Summit in Glasgow, the best speech I heard ever. You know him, how wonderful the guy is, 99 years old now, and it will be really great to hear him just right now for a couple of minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you spend the next 2 weeks debating, negotiating, persuading, and compromising, as you surely must, it's easy to forget that ultimately the emergency climate comes down to a single number: the concentration of carbon in our atmosphere. The measure that greatly determines global temperature. And the changes in that one number is the clearest way to chart our own story, for it defines our relationship with our world. For much of humanity's ancient history, that number bounced wildly between 180 and 300. And so too did global temperatures. It was a brutal and unpredictable world. At times, our ancestors existed only in tiny numbers. Just over 10,000 years ago, that number suddenly stabilized, and with it, Earth's climate. We found ourselves in an unusually benign period, with predictable seasons and reliable weather. For the first time, civilization was possible, and we wasted no time in taking advantage of that. Everything we've achieved in the last 10,000 years was enabled by the stability during this time. The global temperature has not wavered over this period of time more than nature, approach to industry, construction and learning, we're releasing carbon into the atmosphere at an unprecedented pace and scale. We are ready to become. The stability we will depend on is breaking. This story is stability. Those who've done the least will this problem the hardest hit. Ultimately, all of us will feel the impact, some of which are now unavoidable.
The world is melting. You think you have control, we actually have no control. I'm absolutely terrified to bring a child to this world.
Is this how our story is due to end? A tale of the smartest species doomed by that all too human characteristic of failing to see the bigger picture in pursuit of short-term goals. Perhaps the fact that the people most affected by climate change are no longer some imagined future generation, but young people alive today. Perhaps that will give us the impetus we need to rewrite our story, to turn this tragedy into a triumph. We are, after all, the greatest problem solvers to have ever existed on Earth. We now understand this problem. We know how to stop the number rising and put it in reverse. We must recapture billions of tons of carbon from the air. We must fix our sights on keeping 1.5 degrees within reach. A new industrial revolution, powered by millions of sustainable innovations, is essential and is indeed already beginning. We will all share in the benefits: affordable clean energy, healthy air, and enough food to sustain us all. Nature is a key ally. Wherever we restore the wild, it will recapture carbon and help us bring back balance to our planet. And as we work to build a better world, we must acknowledge no nation has completed its development because no advanced nation is yet sustainable. All have a journey still to complete, so that all nations have a good standard of living and a modest footprint. We're going to have to learn together how to achieve this, ensuring none are left behind. We must use this opportunity to create a more equal world. And our motivation should not be fear, but hope.
Can we fix climate problem in one generation? My answer would be yes. We have to. We need to not just to talk about what we can do, but to do what we can.
This is a challenge that we should try to solve in a quick way with a long-term vision.
It comes down to this: the people alive now, the generation to come, will look at this conference and consider one thing. Did that number stop rising and start to drop as a result of commitments made here? There's every reason to believe that the answer can be yes. If working apart, we are force powerful enough to destabilize our planet, surely working together, we are powerful enough to save it. In my lifetime, I've witnessed a terrible decline. In yours, you could, should witness a wonderful recovery. That desperate hope, ladies and gentlemen, delegates, excellencies, is why the world is looking to you and why you are here. Thank you.
It's not working anymore. It works. Just to let you know that after the speech, we agreed a climate financial pact. And most of diplomats is saying that because of his speech. because he was so strong with that message that 20+ countries changed their internal national instructions and decided to vote for sustainable finance mechanism, which, by the way, works. So that's why I decided to present you David Attenborough once more, also recommending his last movie. Okay, it's available on Netflix, if I got to remember, and also on many other places. Thank you once more for your attention. Sorry that I consume a bit more time. Thank you.